yours and take us away.
Thank you, Marilyn. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you. I hope you all had a nice holiday, Passover, Easter. And now we're back. And we're back for not another comedy. Anyway, tonight's film, The Official Story from Argentina. It's directed by Luis Puenzo. I'll get into it in a minute. It's a 1986 Academy Award winner for Best Foreign Language Film. It was also nominated for an Oscar for Best Screenplay. It was the first Oscar for a Latin American film. The first Oscar for a Latin American film. It also won the Golden Globe and Best Film and Best Actress at the Cannes International Film Festival in '86, as well as over 23 other major international awards. And Luis Puenzo, the director, is known for films offering probing, metaphorical portraits of characters and relationships in the face of larger socio-political issues. He feels by telling an intimate story, it is much more probing and much more revealing than it would be if he just told a whole country's story. Anyway, The Official Story, considered his finest work, is a searing, engaging, and vibrantly moral film set in Argentina in 1983, in the final year of the country's last military dictatorship, and during what was known as the Dirty Wars. The trial of those guilty was the basis, and I hope most of you have seen that, for 2023's Academy Award nominated and Golden Globe winning film from Argentina, entitled Argentina 1985. It is available, I believe, on Amazon, and is one that is definitely worth seeing. It is a great follow-up to this film. During this time, 1983, a campaign of state-sponsored terrorism was still killing and torturing thousands of accused political leftists and innocents alike, who were buried in unmarked graves or became what is known as desaparecidos, the disappeared. The Official Story is a wrenching and painful drama that crystallizes the horror and the obscenity of political activities that annihilate family solidarity in the name of ideology. It's based on real political events, as I said, that took place in Argentina after the reactionary military juntas took power in 1976, so it lasted 7 years. During the junta's rule, the parliament was suspended. Unions, political parties, and provincial governments were banned. And in what became known as this Dirty War, between 9,000 and 30,000 people that were deemed left-wing subversives disappeared from society. They weren't deported, they were disappeared. At the center of the story is Alicia Maquet, a high school history teacher, and her husband, Roberto Ibanez, a wealthy and powerful man with connections to both industry and the government, as we've seen. They live in Buenos Aires with their 5-year-old daughter, who we learn is adopted, Gabby. While they dote over Gabby and couldn't love her more from what we see, Alicia, like other members of the Argentine upper middle class, is not aware of how much killing and suffering has gone on in the country, and naively believes only guilty people are arrested. Only guilty people are arrested. Sorry. The opening scenes reveal to us that Gabby was adopted, as the conversation comes into view at that dinner party. And they can be very, and the people that she has dinner with, we learn that these women can be very catty to one another, very pointed in their remarks, not only there, but later on as well. when she reconnects with Anna, an old friend, and Anna is a crucial character in the film, one of two crucial characters in the film. She's returned from exile after 7 years. For what we do not know yet, we have no idea what happened to her. But Roberto's comments at dinner, if you recall, is at that first dinner she attends with them at home, are very telling. He says it's the first time he's seen her in a skirt, and that being in Europe was good for her. Maybe it smoothed out her edges. You get the feeling he doesn't like her and that something else is up. Finally, when she finally tells Alicia later on in vivid detail how she was tortured because of a relationship with a radical, that after 7 years, I'm still drowning. After 7 years, I'm still drowning. It is a pivotal moment in the film, which will begin leading Alicia on this journey to ask questions that could change the course of her life and Gabby's. Following that, there is a student confrontation when one student shouts out, "History is written by murderers." And a fellow teacher also challenges her views, trying to awaken her out of this naive sleep or this turning a blind eye. The film asks some very tough questions as well. Should Alicia search for the real mother of her daughter? Is her own love no less real? What would be best for the little girl? We have to ask these questions during the course of the film. As the suspicions grow, Alicia is inevitably motivated to visit the grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo, who have been demanding the return of children picked up in military sweeps or born in clandestine prisons. And the chants of the grandmothers in the Central Plaza of Buenos Aires seem to, when they say return all children born in captivity, they seem, or she feels, that they're directed straight at her, straight at her. When she meets the old woman Sarah, who may or may not be Gabby's grandmother, the two women grow close in a strange way, a strange and ironic way. There's a political arrogance and heartlessness may have taken a child from one family and assigned it to another, but at some deep and fundamental level, these two women understand each other. They do understand each other. Both of them are made to face the reality of losing a daughter. And although they should be enemies, they find strength from each other. The way this particular relationship is developed is one of the wonders of this film, how they bond, how they come together, and provides its emotional center as love and honor try to find a way to exist in the face of official cruelty. And we see that official cruelty during the film. We see when she visits Roberto's office, the man who's waiting for a meeting and winds up looking like he's had a heart attack in that office as she's leaving. They don't know. We don't know. Also, later on, the investigations and the fears. Some of the key moments in the film come as we watch Alicia realize what's taking place inside her mind and inside her consciousness. And in one of the most powerful scenes in the movie, towards the end, she takes down the clothing her daughter came dressed in and touches it gently. We hear, and we can read her mind at that point, and we hear the music in the background, the lullaby, whatever it is. She's thinking that her daughter's natural mother was the person who put these clothes on this baby girl, who put these particular clothes on this baby girl. As she investigates, she asks the doctor, and she learns about she had a hip problem when she was born, and all of these little things. And especially when she meets with Sarah and she sees the photographs, one of the photographs does look exactly like Gabby, does look exactly like Gabby, as Sarah relates the story of her daughter, and that's her daughter's picture. So it's interesting how she tells their love story and what eventually happened. And as she comes to see Roberto in a new light, despite his arguments with his father and brother insisting, I am not a loser, despite what he knows, he knows he's truly guilty. And while we see his associates trying to evade the investigations and slowly disappearing, we notice that some of them start to disappear towards the end. It is Alicia who interrogates Roberto, pushing him to finally and brutally lash out at her, asking, what am I, a torturer, basically, which seems like more of a confession. And finally, when we hear Gabby's voice over the telephone, their poignant final embrace indicates not a reconciliation. It's not a reconciliation, but a resignation to what is now their separate fates. Now their separate fates as she walks out the door, leaving the key behind. And that last scene is heart-wrenching, seeing little Gabby in the rocking chair and making me, and I'm sure some of you relate back to Gabby's own story about when her parents were killed, and saying, I sat in that rocking chair waiting for them to return. And here is Gabby. And what is she waiting for? What is she waiting for? It is interesting to note that while most critically political films like this usually play outside the countries they're about, they're usually more popular outside the countries they're about. The official story was actually at that time playing in Argentina. Just 2 years after the end of the military junta, this film came out in Argentina. I would probably stake that the prosecutor who appears in Argentina 1985, which is a true story, had seen the film and had influenced him even more in his prosecutions of the military junta. The cast does a great job, and the wonderful international actress, who I hope you all recognize, Norma Alejandro, is extraordinary and memorable. She earned the Best Actress Award at Cannes, as I said, and she also earned the Italian Academy Award for Best Actress, as well as honors as Best Actress from the American Film Critics Society and the New York Circle of Film Critics. She was voted that year as Best Actress. Interesting, though, and here's an interesting, like many progressive actors and others in that country, in Argentina, Norma Alejandro was forced into exile during this period. She traveled to Uruguay first and Spain later. She returned after the fall of the military government in 1983. She once said, Alicia's personal search is also my nation's search for the truth about our history. The film is positive in the way it demonstrates that she can change her life despite all she's giving up, despite all she's losing, that Alicia will change her life. The mothers of the Plaza de Mayo depicted in the film, on April 30th, 1977, they began congregating in the plaza in front of La Casa Rosada, which was called the Pink House or the Presidential Office Building. At first, they would sit in the plaza as protest, a silent protest. However, the police declared a state of emergency in attempts to get rid of them. Therefore, their sit-in turned into a walk, as we saw. To represent the missing and disappeared, the mothers embroidered the names of their children into cloth diapers and wore them on their heads as they marched around the plaza. This image of the diaper is now the iconic image of the movement, Las Madres de la Plaza de Mayo. To this day, the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo continue to march in front of La Casa Rosada. They meet on Thursdays at 3:30 p.m., those who are still alive, and walk around the monument in the center of the plaza. There are still a few of the original mothers remaining. and grandmothers. And as we've seen in the film, some of the disappeared were pregnant when they were kidnapped. When their babies were born, they were taken away and given to wealthy families, much as in the film, close to the dictatorship who raised them. There is a national DNA database for families of the disappeared. If someone feels they may be one of these missing children, they can take a test to determine if this is true. In fact, 2 missing nietos, or grandchildren, were discovered in December of 2022, just 3 years ago, bringing the number of recovered children up to 132. 132 children thus far, maybe more. I don't have a number after 2022. Today, the film has become a staple in many Latin American culture courses throughout the US and Europe, keeping its relevance intact, even though it is now well into its 40th year. It is still an important film. And if you watched the beginning, they remastered the film in 2014. So I can tell you, I can attest it looks very good cinematically. And speaking of the cinematography, the editing, I thought was fabulous because it vignettes at the beginning. We see little vignettes in Alicia's life and with Gabby and school, but it fills in a lot of background which isn't spoken about, but we can assume, we can figure, especially for the Argentine audience, for the young Argentine audience. Chela Ruiz is the person who portrays Sarah in the film, and she was a member of the grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo. Sarah actually was one of the grandmothers from the film. Roberto is played by Hector Altiero, a great Argentine actor who's appeared in many films. In fact, he's appeared in several films with Norma Alejandro. They've worked together many times. And the actress who portrays Anna also does a wonderful job in the film. But it really is an important film. But I thought a great, film to include in this. We had, the present day with the Brazilian film, and here we get a little look into the past of Argentina. It's revealing, it's resonant. It's what happens when a dictatorship takes over a country. And I hope you all appreciated it. So now I'd like to open it up for the discussion. I want to hear what you thought about it, how you felt about Alicia's quandary, about what was going on, about Gabby herself. So who's going to jump in there? Who wants to go first? Sandra Lefkowitz.
Actually, I don't want to necessarily go first because I have a real question. I've seen films like this before. I wasn't sure why you chose to put the 2 films together.
Well, actually, it's funny. Usually it works out serendipitously. I don't, but one, yes, one was about a mother who gives up her child to go to, work. And the other is about a child who is adopted. There is that, I can tell you a little bit of it was conscious, but not all of it. Maybe it was sitting there in my mind, but I just wanted to show from 2 different South American countries a little bit of the culture. And I thought this was an important film dealing with Argentine culture, which is in recent history. I mean, yes, it's 40 years ago. It's a little over 40 years ago, but still resonates today. It's still important. And I thought it was an important film for those of us who've never seen it to see. It's a revealing film. It's an important film, and it resonates today. It resonates outside of Argentina. and I don't think I have to explain why. But it does. It does. And I hope that answers your question.
Well, it somewhat does, because I think today we're finding out more about people who've had kidnapped children in other more local countries, like the Canadian kids who were taken from their homes, and you know, and the children who were from the reservations who were taken.
Mm.
They had to. So I think this film resonates with today, but I think that the situations are so completely different in terms of why they have happened. And I thought that there may have been a broader connection that you were making.
Well, I will tell you, Marilyn and I were discussing it before, and what she thought was so interesting that I had shown Kidnapped last month,
Yeah,
which was a child who was kidnapped from his home,
right.
literally, and brought up in another faith. But it's the same thing, it's how a society operates and does this. Yes, I mean we can point everywhere about this going on. It was even very rampant at one point in China. Kids were being kidnapped and sold into other families or passed into other families because of the one-child law. If they had a girl, they would give it up. It would be taken away, either killed or hopefully adopted. So it is something that goes on in other cultures. But I merely was looking initially looking to show different cultures in South America, and also dealing with cinema that's important. Cinema that's important from these countries, two standout films, if you will, from these countries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jackie.
Liked the movie and thought it was quite interesting because we just recently saw the Penguin Lessons, and the Penguin Lessons basically goes right along. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it goes right along with this, with the grandmothers and them marching and how that all started, and through this whole process of what was going on in the country. And in that one, the school, same thing. The school were all of the haves, and the people who were being targeted were the have-nots, obviously. So it was we thought it was very interesting, and actually really quite well done. I think sometimes we have a tendency to have very heavy movies, and even though this dealt with an extremely heavy issue, I thought it was done in a terrific way, so that you felt the empathy for everyone, that what was going on, including the little girl. I mean, at the very end, when she's singing and carrying on, and the two parents are looking at each other, it was just, I thought it was very well done. I really did. So, and I liked the tie-in with, like, of course you had nothing to do with the other movie, but I thought it was really interesting that other movie had just hit, and it's the same basic thing.
Great comment. Thank you. Yeah, I'm planning on seeing it at some point. But you're right. I mean, this film is extremely well produced. And as I was telling Marilyn, one of the producers was a friend of mine. I had met him down here and done he asked me to do work with him presenting films, which I did several years ago. Rolando Epstein is one of the producers, and I was only sorry. I was hoping I would get in touch with him and have him here tonight for us to have a discussion in front of you. When I can do that, I will, when I can get in touch with him. But it's very difficult to get people from all these other countries in here for an evening. But when I can, I will. I've done it before, and maybe I'll be able to do it again for us. But yeah, it is the film is very vivid in the way it portrays everything that happened without us seeing it. Again, it's, we didn't have to see a lot of what happened. We hear it, and that's why the screenplay is so well done. I mean, even all the characters, even the father loves the daughter. He loves Gabby. And we have to understand that he's not, he's pushed into a corner because they're complicit. Even the priest is complicit in this film, because when she goes for confession and she's asking the question, you know, what did he know? Is this, you know, is this a child that comes from this problem? And he doesn't answer. He purposely evades answering her and walks out. So I thought, you know, that was interesting. It points up all the complicity that was going on, and that the upper class women, you know, were ignoring it and treating it like, well, we don't get involved. If you remember that first dinner party, let's not talk politics, let's not talk these things, and then they start picking on the women themselves. So either way, they're attacking something. They're attacking something. Thank you, Jackie. Kathy?
Karen.
Okay.
Karen, I'm sorry, Karen.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. My name's
Yeah, I'm
not up
sorry.
there.
Yeah.
My impression of the movie was that it was very powerful. And I particularly enjoyed watching Alicia move from her both physically and then you know, mentally move from her evolution through the movie. Her stance with the official story, and then it evolving through the movie, and also the history that happens. That's a very common thing where we're influenced by history depending on who wrote it, you know. So
Yes.
anyway, that was my take.
Yeah, terrific. No, it is important. I mean, there's some of these lines which really resonate, that these characters say, and that we can understand it's coming out of these, you know, we see how these young men were influenced by their literature teacher, and even to the point of committing an act of resistance when they put the pictures up on the chalkboard for her to see. All of these things, you know, lead to her awakening. It's really about a film about an awakening, in a sense, you know, her own awakening. You know, here is a woman who couldn't conceive, and therefore it was so important. I mean, at the very beginning, I mean, even the thing she really was a good mother. I mean, you know, she said she's giving Gabby a bath, and she says, "Sing for me while I'm preparing your pajamas, so I know you're not drowning in the tub." I mean, all of these little things, you know, they resonate. They're into her character, and her awakening. I mean, that scene. What was devastating was the scene when she's talking to Sarah, and Sarah's showing her the pictures, and Sarah asking her the questions, and she breaks down. And Sarah takes her hand, you know, and you know, you shouldn't be crying. You shouldn't be crying is useless, is what she says, because she doesn't cry anymore. Crying over it is useless. You know, which is an interesting comment. Thank you, Marilyn.
Two things. Number one, in view of the times, and I guess this really happens, but the lack of communication between Alicia and Roberto, so that she really, really did not know the truth, and she was really wanting to know the truth. And those who did know the truth would not share it with her. I mean, the secrets and the lies, again, how many movies do we see that secrets and lies define people? And there she pretty much was somewhat of a victim, because she really did not know. It was just seems so unfair to her, but I believe that could have happened.
Yes, but you know, I always probe this kind of a question because I think back to other times. We think back through modern history, okay? Preferably, you know, during the Nazi era,
Uh-huh.
and how many women might have behaved this way and didn't ask questions. They went to the parties, they went, and when Jews started disappearing, on the disappearance, did they care? Did they notice? Did they want to notice? Did they want to acknowledge? And then after the war, well, I didn't know. I didn't know.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, that's always the excuse. I didn't know. I didn't see it. But one has to ask these questions. One has to probe. It doesn't, and she certainly didn't feel innocent. I don't think she felt innocent over when she learns the total truth. She thought, okay, he got a baby from a mother who wanted to give up a child, as far as she knew.
I think you were correct. And when you said some of the women didn't want to know.
Yeah, especially when Anna, did you notice her face when Anna was telling her how she was tortured? At first, she was like not even paying attention, and all of a sudden, she starts to realize what she's saying. And she's not processing right away. And then she begins to process this stuff because it's later on when she asks Roberto, you knew about this?
Yeah.
She never queried Roberto about this. Did you have any idea what was going on? It's how do you handle that? I don't know. It's an interesting question, but that's why I like to probe it and see. But thank you for bringing it up, man.
One other thing, and also,
Yeah.
Shelley, you and I said there are no winners in these situations.
Yes.
And in my La La World land, I would love to be able to take it to the next step when this movie ends, and Sarah and Alicia, at least, if not Roberto, are able to have a family unit for the betterment of Gabby.
That is
So
La
that
La
would be the
Land.
sequel.
That is La
Yeah.
La Land. I think if anything, I would like Sarah and Alicia to bond and raise the
Yeah.
child.
Right.
If that could be possible. But I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Marilyn. Susan Pauls.
Hi there. I have a couple of things that I wanted to, I guess, mention. First thing is, those boys were too old for high school. They were much too old. I mean, the suits helped and much too destructive. She was such a stick in the mud and old-fashioned in her ways, as the other teachers noticed and as the kids took advantage of. So we're getting to learn about her, that she doesn't like the new ways and she doesn't like the new ways of educating kids and so on. Then there was the time with her friends sitting at the dinner parties and at the bar when they had that little reunion, of how incredibly bitchy they were and horrible. And, you're talking about the relationship between women. This sort of introduced the relationship between her and her friends that was toxic, except for the one old friend and her maid who took
Yes.
care of Gabby. That was the only positive women relationship until the grandmother at the end. I knew nothing about Argentina's junta. I knew about Chile. And there's been songs and there's been stories about the desamparados. But I didn't know it in detail. I had seen film clips of the marches and so on. And how it happens, how they take immoral people like her husband, amoral, and use him, and he's more than willing to be used because they make a good living and can get the kids and what it takes to do it. And unfortunately, it reminded me of our current political situation, because it had to start somewhere. It didn't start with marches. It started with incursions into people's lives and people disappearing and information being withheld. And it scared the hell out of me, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't want to tell you, well, it's unwritten, one of my motivations for wanting to show movies like this, but it's true. I mean, it's for her, and the reason I think, you're pointing at the filmmaking itself is, yeah, the boys were probably because they couldn't get younger kids to play these roles at that time. It was right after this period, but the fact that she was, as a teacher who she was just adds to her awakening. It's because this is an awakening. It's an awakening for the country, not just for her, in seeing the film. So I think it was definitely pointed. If you were Argentinian and you were sitting there watching this movie, you would say, and I think people would say, how could she not know? How could she not know? How could she be that, have her head in the hole in the ground that far, that she really, being married to this man who was a total opportunist, and would bend with whatever the government was doing. I mean, he had two sides to him, or maybe more than two sides. But when he comes in, when she comes to his office and he walks out, and that guy is there that wanted the meeting with someone else, and he says, "Oh, it's so good to see you." He says, "Why don't you come tomorrow?" Because he knew that nobody was going to be there tomorrow. They were all leaving for some other conference somewhere. I mean, you have to think of this guy's motivations and his guilt. He was ridden with guilt when he was attacking his father and his brother. And his father says, I can't make a joke about my oldest son, but my oldest son seems to be one of them. It becomes, he knows it. He knows it. And it's in direct opposition to her. He knows everything. She either doesn't want to know anything or pretends not to know anything. So I think it's more she doesn't want to know. She just doesn't want to know. So I think that's the case here. That's the case. But thank you. Thank you. Yes, Sandra.
Well, it occurs to me that you've answered a question that of the person who is showing films and wanted to know why such heavy films.
Susan.
You've really put together something for me. It occurred to me. There are many people in society at any level and at any time who do not want to deal with the present. And they are able to, by the nature of their personalities, move aside that which is unpleasant. But some of this is universal. And what happens with film and the virtue of us watching this together is that we bring something to it in our conversation that allows us to, on an impersonal level, deal with that which is very personal. Because the fact is, there are lots of people through the time who just don't want to deal with difficult things. And the beauty of a great film is that it allows us not to take it personally, but to see it and then deal with it on an impersonal level. And if we are lucky enough to have the conversation, we then learn something for our own selves and for our own lives. Somebody who does not really want to deal with the chaos in this country can really look at this film and say, what's going on in this time? They don't have to do it publicly, but they can take it and internalize it. So I think that this is a really important reason to have a film like this. Whether you like it or not, whether you're depressed by it, you'll get over the depression because it's not you, but it'll give you a chance to reflect on where you are at in your life.
Yeah, that very well said. I agree with you, because that's what film should do. Good film should do. This kind of film. I'm not saying every genre should do that, but this is a particular genre that does. Look, the past is always present. The past will always be present with us in some form. Whether history is rhyming again. It doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And whether it's rhyming again, or there are things going on in the world that are significant and are embedded in a film like this. And sometimes they made this film in 1984, 85, and they had no idea what was going to happen in the next 40 years. But yet, that's my point. Look how the past is always present. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't go away. Human nature doesn't change, unfortunately. And that's what we're faced with. And a lot of these films reveal that. You know, I try to find films that reveal all of these things, but I do have surprises coming up. Anyway, so thank you for saying those things. I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Aulette.
Well, everybody has said what had to be said, really. But I noticed one scene when Alicia is walking with Gabby and Sarah is, I think, in the area and looking, and they're all girls. They're all little girls, blonde, brunette, whatever. Not one boy. I found that strange that there was not one boy in that group of children with their mothers, either being picked up from school or what have you, or being brought to school. The other moment that I thought was very significant is when Alicia is holding the sweater that the baby came to her. You notice she went and she held the safety pin, which probably held on the diaper in those days. I thought I was just in awe of that particular scene because it was quiet and her mind was working as to what she looked like, what she came in. It was very poignant for me. But I will say I did go to Argentina in the early 80s because my aunt lived there. Okay. And when we're done with the film, I have a story that was related to what was going on and my aunt at that time.
Okay.
I didn't want to disrupt anything with the movie.
All right, we'll get right back to you. Nancy? Nancy, you got to unmute. You've got to unmute yourself.
Got it. Okay.
There you go. Okay, great.
I have a couple of questions because it went fast and I was going to go back and watch it a second time and I didn't have time to do it. How many of these grandmothers was it all grandmothers who were marching?
No, it was also, there were also mothers who had, you know, their kids were kidnapped if they survived. But it was mostly grandmothers. It was also men that would march. But mostly women. It was mostly women, aunts, grandmothers, sisters.
So about how many were there?
Ultimately, I mean, it started out in a smaller group and it just grew over time because people joined in with them. People, sympathizers and groups joined in with them. So it was thousands of people would show up in that square. And the military tried to contain them. I'm sorry?
It just seems sort of cute that Alicia met up with Sarah, that they recognized one another from the.
Well, wait. It was really the woman that meets her where at that place at the Hall of Records or whatever it was that says to her, and then she goes to Sarah. And if you remember, they were standing outside the school, and when she was putting Gabby in the car, and she was pointing her out, and that's where it began. And then yes, and cinematically, you gotta be able to control, you know, your little world that you're creating here. So when Gabby goes to the square to see them marching, you know, she can see Sarah, and Sarah sees her. You know, it's important, you know. So, but there was already a preconditioning for that. And that's why.
I thought the film was terrifying. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's a nice way to end it. That's terrifying. Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Sandra Fuss.
I think it's really important to watch films like this. I did not find it depressing. it puts you in touch with what happened, and hopefully we learn from these kind of things. I mean, these really went on, these happened. And I thought it was an important story to tell. And these were the
Mhm.
times, and those students, that was like the beginning of people wakening up, right? That this can't go on there. And I thought the students acting up and speaking out, that was very important too, to the revelations. And she developed a conscience, Alicia.
Mm.
So
Well, yeah, I mean,
I enjoyed the film.
terrific, and you're right. I mean, the
Right.
students were reacting to what a teacher was telling them, and that's what they have to be. If all the teachers just towed the line, they would toe the line. But they had a teacher who was questioning,
Or
who was asking them to think about it, and
some of
that's
these guys, there was one student who was questioning, who
yes.
found out things from other sources. And she
Mhm.
was teaching the book and the prescribed thing, and you knew it was wrong.
Yes.
So these
Yes.
guys were waking up. Anyways, it was an interesting film. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you. Marilyn?
I found it ironic listening to the conversation as to how much Alicia knew, didn't know, didn't want to know, whatever. She was in the script. She was a history teacher. I mean, she has been a history of
I was
so
waiting
many
for that.
different subjects, and yet, ironically, they chose her to be a history teacher. You're supposed to learn from history. Somehow she missed that lesson.
Well, she not only didn't miss the lesson, she just taught history as she was taught it. If you remember, the general that was riding in the car with them to the airport was making comments about that, and it was an interesting shot going on in that scene. She's listening, and he's going on. He says they still don't believe that San Martin crossed the Andes. Which was a mythical story, and she all of a sudden is crinkling up the papers, which she took off the blackboard. She's, like, I don't want to be found out now. She's beginning to, you can't, in other words, what that says to me, again, it's another metaphor. You can't bury history, lady. You can't hide it. It's there. You're holding it in your hands now. And it's part of that awakening.
But it also depends on whether you're learning it by rote or you're learning it with critical thinking.
Yes, and hopefully through critical thinking, which is now in a critical condition in this
Hugely
country.
critical. Hugely critical.
No, we're not going to talk about that.
No, we're not.
Okay. Okay, who else? Anybody else? Yeah, Linda Hawk.
Then unmute.
Yeah, she's trying. She's
Oh.
trying. I see her trying.
Right.
She has this arthritic connection.
They move,
There it is.
you can hit on the box. You can't hit on the box now. You got to go down there, and I have a little uptake. Yeah, I agree that she was a little bit slow on catching on to things with her being a history teacher and all. But I also would give her the benefit of the doubt, because if you have a decent marriage, you don't start with a default position where you don't believe what your husband says.
Yeah.
So I think she had to come around to being suspicious of him in order to be able to, buy into that, because it was kind of a slow process there. And I unless I not remembering, seems to me that they were showing them as a pretty decent couple there at the beginning of the movie, weren't they? Where they would seem to have a good relationship, and they both doted on the child, and everything was fine. So I found her very admirable that she persisted in trying to find out what was happening when it was to no advantage for her. She wasn't unhappy, everything was fine. So she really rocked the boat to be able to, come up with that. And I think most people would have somebody else would have been having to do the digging and coming to them and trying to make her believe it, as opposed to her being the one, to disrupt her married life and her happy life at home with a child
Well,
But
yeah,
I-
definitely. I mean, it's the fact is, it also we're looking at again another culture where I think most of the women don't get involved in the man's work.
Mhm.
I don't know what he's doing, and I won't get involved in it, and that's so
Well, and
yeah,
you don't automatically think, well, gee, I wonder if my husband's a criminal.
yeah,
Unless
exactly. I
you had
mean,
some pretty good clues coming there. I think the normal reaction would be to just assume, no, he would never be involved in anything like that. He couldn't have known. I think that
yeah.
would be the
That
normal.
that's the hope. Yeah, I mean that's a woman would hope that. That's why she becomes an investigator in that
Mhm.
later part of the film, is when she's starting to question. She's not only she's questioning herself, she's questioning what's happening out there, and then she finally comes to the point where she's questioning him.
Right.
All roads led to Roberto, is basically what happened. And he was feeling now pressured because his friends were under investigation and they were being investigated by the government, but now she was the one doing the investigating. It was very interesting how we, look at that one person was doing the interrogating now, not a whole government, which was hopefully what was beginning to happen throughout.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you. Nancy, you had something
One
else, and
one
then
more quick
Barbara, I'll get to
question.
you.
What did Roberto do? What was his job?
They were in some kind of economic business because they were in trade. They were dealing with other countries. It was never explicitly put, but they were under the control of the military. There was a general that was in charge of all of this,
Okay.
but they were dealing with trade, with some kind of trade situation. That's why they were traveling to Bolivia.
Right.
They were all, so he was up there in business. In business.
He was in business. Okay, got it.
Yeah, in business,
All right.
right. You got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Barbara?
Am I unmuted?
Yes,
Yeah.
you are.
Oh, okay. I wanted to say, I was particularly moved by the performance of her friend Anna.
Yes.
I thought that was lovely. And I liked the way that she gradually kind of became aware as a teacher when she had that one fresh student and he was giving him a hard time. And then when she handed him the paper, she said A minus.
Yeah.
And then she starts to let her hair down. I knew about this and I saw the movie back when. And so it wasn't horrifying for me because I knew about, the grandmothers and the desaparecidos, and it's what it was. It's horrifying, but it's true.
Mhm,
It
mhm.
was.
Yeah, it really is. And that's one of the points of the film. But it is,
This is
yes,
what
that's the student that said, history is written by murderers. And it was the teacher that said, that told her in the car, you're literally holding his life in your hands. And when she starts to awaken, she realizes, and that's why she sees him, she does what she does because she could have really done damage, a great deal of damage at that
Yep.
point. So yeah, terrific. Okay. Oh, Marilyn, again.
One last thing, based on what Linda said
Yeah.
about their marriage, and I thought, well, to give Roberta the benefit of the doubt, do you think it's possible that he kept her in the dark because he was protecting her?
Do I think he was protecting her? Well, he showed an awful way of showing how he protected her at the end. But
Didn't he though? Yeah.
yeah, he really,
Yeah.
for a guy who loved this little girl and pretended to love her in that way, I can't, my jury's out on that one.
Okay.
I
I mean,
lucked out
as
on
the
that one.
Horrified
stress became,
himself,
as the
though.
stress became more and for
Yes,
him, he was losing control. But
yeah,
at the
but
beginning, he had control.
yes.
And I thought maybe he thought he was doing her a favor and protecting her and shielding her. But as he became more involved and more stressed, he lost it.
Well, that's it. I mean, you know, look, we can go,
It's
we can
possible,
run
it's
through the
just a thought.
psychology books on this, you know, because that's a very, it's on his part, it's a very narcissistic thing. You know, I'll keep her stupid so she doesn't, you know, ask any questions, and she'll be fine. You know, I'll love her the way she is, but if she starts to snoop around and question what I'm doing,
Mhm.
my love is going to change. So I don't see it as protectionism. I
All
see
right.
it as,
Well,
you
then
know,
maybe it's just a lack of communication and how honest was the relationship, but we'll never know and it doesn't.
that's now you're getting it stuff. Yeah, that's what I mean. Terrific. Okay, good. I'm glad we got there. Okay, Arlette.
All right, my aunt lived in Argentina, and I did go there in the early 80s. I worked for Eastern Airlines, and I'd taken a taxi everywhere with her. So we were in the main drag by the Eastern office, okay, not at the airport, just an office. And we're sitting in the back, and the taxi driver pulls over and says that there's a lot of traffic, saying to her in Spanish, you know, tell her to get out, meaning me. So I get out and he takes my hand in the cab. They disappear. And I'm saying, oh my God. And this was in the early 80s. I didn't know, you know, what was going on with her. And I managed to cross over. And finally she came back. She took her pocketbook and she hit him over the head so hard that he finally brought her back to Eastern Airlines. I really didn't know what was going to be, but it was earth-shattering. That's all I can say. I have goosebumps as I'm telling you the story.
Did you find out what ensued between
No,
your aunt and the
no,
cab
then he
driver?
left. Oh, she jumped out and he left. Oh my God. But you know, it was the early 80s.
Were you having a conversation in the back of the cab that he was?
Well, we were speaking German.
Oh, but
He
better.
couldn't understand. He couldn't understand, you know.
Oh, no, it says
But
some
it was the
Argentinians
early
speak
80s.
That's
German
where the
very well.
Germans were.
Yeah, I just said
But-
that, Barbara. Thank you.
That's
Some-
true. And listen, I'm a Holocaust survivor. I know all about that. But
Yeah.
I will tell you that I thought, you know, he was being nice. He said that there's a lot of traffic, you know,
Traffic.
when it stops you can cross. But I didn't think he would take. I thought it was going to be a ransom for my aunt. And then I
Oh.
was thinking of the early 80s, what was happening with the military. Oh my God, I didn't know what was going to happen. But
Yeah.
she came back to me.
Well, I'm glad.
She's
I'm glad
a
it worked
Holocaust
out
survivor.
well.
She knows how to survive. She hit him.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Anybody else? Well, yeah, yes, Sandra.
The scene where he lashed out on her, like I thought at that point everything was getting to him too. His world was crashing down.
Yes.
And like you really wonder what was going to happen. Of course, you said it was the end of coming to the end of that 7-year military rule, so things were crashing down on him. But I just that was quite a scene too. You could just see the torment.
Well, the
And-
look on his face after it all happened and he's listening to her on the phone, he
Mhm.
realized his world is over. You
Yeah.
know, it's done. You know, it's like anything else. You can only get away with this so long. Unfortunately, some people get away with it longer than others. But
Yeah,
yes,
but I thought he was crashing down too, whatever he did, and it was all caving in
Yeah.
on him too.
yes.
It was really an interesting film.
Oh yeah.
Good, good. Okay, so next our next film is next month. We're in India. We're in India, and neither of these films are really Bollywood films. They're what I would call, well, one is certainly what we call parallel cinema, but that's the second one. I'll get into that later in the month. But the next one is called The Last Film Show, and it is an uplifting film. It has some drama in it. It has some sadness, but it is an uplifting film, and it has humor. And it is it's a recent film from 2022, The Last Film Show, and it's about a young boy named Samay, who fights heaven and earth to find the light, to find the light. He wants to catch, control, cut, and project that light to tell stories. Now, to pursue that dream, he must leave everything he loves and take a flight to find the light. And it's a wonderful experience. It's about, young boys and girls in India during this period, not living in Bombay, not living in the big city. But it is part of a director's story, and it will have some familiarity to another great film about a young child who falls under the influence of cinema. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, it's an Italian film. That's all the hints I'm going to give you. And it's got wonderful music.
Cinema Paradiso.
Yes, right, ditto.
Yes, okay.
Right.
But yes, it is. And you'll get the parallels to that very, very quickly. But it does depart from that as well. And it's also a story of India, modernity versus tradition, and also about cinema in India. It's a very telling story about cinema itself in India, the history of cinema in India. So I look forward to your reactions to that film. It's got a lot to say. And in fact, I think it was their submission for the Academy Award. I'm not sure. Anyway, I didn't remember whether it was something else. It got passed over for something else. I have no way of knowing, but right now. But we'll get into that next month. So I bid you adieu. I thank you for a wonderful conversation. And
And we thank you, Shelley, and
Thank
we're all
you.
ready to go to India with you next month.
oh, terrific.
Thank you
Night,
very,
everybody.
very much. And we'll see
Night.
you all.
Thank you.
You
Thank
will
you,
love
everybody.
India. I've been there, I love
Be
it.
well. Where haven't you been? Be well.
Thanks.
Be well,
Bye,
everybody.
be well, everybody.
Good night.
In a bit,
Good
good
night.
evening.